The story begins with the protagonist completely locked in, sweating away in a virtual reality game like a dedicated Discord moderator who hasn't seen the sun in a decade. For this certified couch potato, the digital world is the entire universe, and his only personality trait is leveling up his character. After sacrificing his entire youth, posture, and social life to the grind, he finally arrives at his ultimate main character moment, standing right on the edge of becoming the most overpowered entity in the lobby. With the kind of unhinged focus usually reserved for typing paragraphs in comment sections, he unleashes his ultimate secret move, the legendary Phoenix Fist, hitting the boss monster with a strike so violently frame-perfect it manifests a literal black flash, which instantly vaporizes the boss monster into literal pixels. The surrounding players are left absolutely flabbergasted, witnessing a mythical creature that had wiped out entire teams get effortlessly deleted by a guy using nothing but his bare hands. He flexes to the remaining lobby that this is the world of a virtual reality game where he has built an untouchable reputation as an absolute legend. He intentionally chose to fight using nothing but his fists, a weapon category universally mocked as a joke by the entire community, just so he could brag about overcoming the game through pure, toxic dedication. Right before the game's servers are permanently shut down by the developers, he accomplishes his life's purpose of defeating every single boss in existence, prompting him to finally log out and rip the greasy headset off his face while thinking that he made it just in time. However, the moment reality loads back in, his legendary power completely vanishes, leaving him to face the tragic realization that his actual physical body is incredibly weak. Having neglected basic human survival by refusing to eat a single proper meal for 2 whole weeks, he genuinely wonders if he is about to die right there in his chair, yet he feels absolutely no regrets because he believes he achieved peak gamer status. Suddenly, the peaceful embrace of his imminent doom is interrupted by a woman aggressively shaking him awake, as if she were trying to restart a broken lawnmower. Still completely confused and lacking any brain cells, he hears her barking orders at him to hurry up and get ready for the day before he misses his chance. He blinks his eyes and looks around the room, totally clueless as to why his expensive gaming setup has been replaced by generic wooden furniture, until the booming voice of his father echoes through the hallway, calling him Kazuya. Absolute panic instantly sets in as he realizes he is trapped inside his parents' house, a place he successfully escaped a whole decade ago. He looks down at his own hands, expecting 30-year-old calluses, but instead freezes in utter horror upon realizing that he has been hit with a massive reverse-aging nerf, looking exactly like an awkward, broke teenager. Right at that precise moment, the television screen in the living room begins broadcasting a breaking news report concerning a sudden monster outbreak in the local area. His father instantly grows incredibly uneasy, pacing around like a nervous character, but his mother casually waves it off with total chill, reassuring him that the situation will be easily taken care of by the local Adventurers Guild. Kazuya stands there looking like a confused anime character, with question marks hovering over his head, listening to the reporter explain that a massive creature has appeared, specifically an evil boar classified as a large-type absolute unit. Kazuya is completely stunned to learn that literal monsters are casually roaming around his actual neighborhood, prompting him to retreat back to his bedroom so he can try to process this bizarre reality check. While rummaging through his desk, he stumbles upon a school pamphlet that causes his brain to completely short-circuit the more he reads through its pages. It turns out that in this bizarre parallel universe, teenagers do not study math or history, but instead attend specialized schools to learn the fine art of jumping monsters in the streets, and he is apparently scheduled to enroll in one immediately. Despite having a million questions about how he accidentally traveled back in time to an alternate dimension, one fact remains absolutely certain to him, which was that he knows exactly how to throw hands. He convinces himself that no matter what obstacles stand in his path, he will simply choose the fist weapon category once again, rise to the position of the ultimate fist king, and dominate this new world just like a hidden boss. With his delusions fully restored, he grabs his smartphone to scroll through the internet for some much-needed knowledge about his new life. He discovers that the institution in question is actually a middle school and that his unathletic self has been assigned to the generic swordsman course. Intrigued by the skills, he scrolls down to inspect the official curriculum, only to discover that the academy spends 3 whole years teaching students basic skills like sword bash level 5 and fire arrow level 5. He is utterly appalled by this information, recognizing these exact abilities as bottom-tier, beginner-level trash from his old game that any decent player could max out during a casual weekend tutorial. The realization that society spends 36 months mastering literal starter skills completely ruins his mood, making him wonder what the point of such agonizingly slow progress even is when they could just watch a guide on YouTube. He then wonders if he can access his personal screen to check his base stats, recalling that back in his gaming days, he would simply mutter the word status to summon a floating neon menu. Waiting with anticipation, he stands in the center of his bedroom and begins screaming the word status at the top of his lungs like a crazy person trying to activate a voice command fridge, repeating it over and over until his mother yells through the wall for him to shut up. Embarrassed but desperate, he walks out and asks her if she possesses any hidden knowledge regarding his current stats or character build. Instead of providing an ancient secret, she simply hands him a crumpled piece of paper known as a skill sheet, assuming that this is the mandatory paperwork he is making a scene about for the upcoming freshman entrance ceremony. He flattens the paper out, takes one look at his character sheet, and is left completely speechless by the absolute tragedy printed before his eyes. His weapon proficiency stats are practically in the negatives, and his solitary active ability is a generic, low-tier stamina recovery move that belongs on a background villager. A massive wave of panic sets in as he stares at his garbage stats, genuinely questioning if he will even pass the test to get accepted into a literal middle school. His father then strolls into the room to offer some boomer wisdom, explaining that attending classes will naturally help him unlock more skills over time. But to Kazuya, the entire situation feels completely hopeless. Even if this world operates on the exact same game mechanics he mastered in his bedroom, his current base stats are painfully weak, making his dreams of becoming the ultimate fist king feel further away than a father who went to buy milk. At this pathetic power level, he cannot even hope to defeat a basic level 1 tutorial monster, let alone challenge the high-level bosses of this world, leading him to doubt if he can ever truly become a top-tier player. His father looks at his depressed posture with a mixture of confusion and pity, telling him that accepting one's own weakness is actually the very first step toward becoming a true champion. He reassures his son that his progress will only go up from here, prompting Kazuya to thank his father for the sudden motivational speech and vow that he will eventually become absolutely crazy strong. His father then suggests that if he is truly serious about changing his destiny, he should probably go touch some grass at the local training hall starting tomorrow morning. The very next day, Kazuya arrives at the local training grounds absolutely beaming with the hyperactive energy of a gamer who has just discovered a new glitch. The resident gym instructor informs him that all training weapons are completely free of charge for kids under the age of 15, though he notes that a standard swordsman build is strictly limited to learning sword-type abilities. However, as Kazuya inspects his official skill sheet, his sharp eyes notice an absolute error in the system that should have been mechanically impossible. His sheet lists a variety of gun-related abilities among the unlockables, proving that while arbitrary job classes exist to keep the casual players happy, there are actually zero hard restrictions on what skills a person can acquire adjusting his imaginary glasses, as he mutters, all according to plan, thinking he is Light Yagami or some shit. Realizing that he can build a hybrid character, he decides that the very first ability he needs to rush down is the physical ability boost passive to increase his overall strength. He immediately initiates a brutal, unhinged training routine, beating a wooden log continuously for 8 hours straight, while spamming a basic heal spell every single time his soft hands start to blister and bleed. Complete physical exhaustion hits him like a truck, but he notices with absolute joy that the bleeding has successfully stopped, and that his mastery over the heal spell has finally leveled up. The skin on his battered knuckles begins to grow back in real time, and even though his hands still look slightly ruined, he feels like he has successfully broken past his human limits through pure, toxic dedication. However, his overall magic pool is still incredibly small, and he has yet to successfully unlock the physical ability boost he desperately desires. The local gym regulars and instructors quickly start to notice this strange teenager who keeps returning to the venue day after day, violently attacking a wooden log with a blunt weapon without taking a single water break. One of the trainers remarks to his colleague that the kid has been grinding for 8 hours every single day, as if he were possessed by a literal demon or trying to escape a ban wave. By the end of the week, Kazuya becomes absolutely certain that this reality uses the exact same mechanics as his favorite video game, meaning his years of being a basement-dwelling player can finally be utilized as legitimate real-world knowledge. Eventually, his insane grinding pays off as he finally unlocks the physical ability boost, allowing him to swing a heavy mace at maximum speed for a full hour without his arms falling off. Setting his sights on the next milestone, he decides his new objective is to force his mace proficiency stat all the way to level 10 through sheer, repetitive violence. While he is busy treating the wooden log like it owes him money, he notices a young girl and her father watching his bizarre display from a safe distance. The girl loudly complains to her dad that her father does nothing but play video games all day, while Kazuya, who is growing incredibly bored of swinging his weapon in a straight line, decides to use his mace to try and carve the log into a beautiful anime sculpture instead. The girl openly labels him a complete weirdo, but her father finds his choice of a blunt weapon incredibly cool, pointing out that the boy is practicing with an elite level of intensity. The girl assumes that Kazuya is just trolling and fooling around, but her father strongly disagrees, stating that those are the unhinged, focused eyes of a true grinder who will inevitably become overpowered because he does not care about the opinions of casual onlookers. Kazuya attempts to show off by executing another massive swing, but he completely loses his balance and wipes out, failing the move entirely. Another week of intense practice passes by, and right when he is about to put the finishing touches on his wooden masterpiece, the log violently shatters into a million useless splinters. Utterly defeated, Kazuya throws a massive, toddler-tier tantrum in the middle of the gym, screaming at the sky about why the physics in this world are so incredibly difficult to master. He begins to desperately doubt whether his hidden stats are even going up at all, even though he has to admit that swinging the massive mace now requires barely any physical effort. The same girl notices him losing his mind once again, as he openly wishes that he could just press a button to check his stats, before he abruptly decides to change up his training method entirely. Suddenly, the slick log slips completely out of his sweaty grip and goes flying directly toward the unsuspecting girl like a heat-seeking missile. He tries to scream a warning at her, but the projectile is moving far too fast for a normal human to dodge, forcing him to act purely on instinct. Without a single thought in his empty head, he dashes forward with incredible speed and absolutely shatters the flying log in midair with a perfectly timed strike, leaving the girl completely stunned by the sudden display of main character energy. In that exact moment, a realization washes over him as he realizes he has just successfully triggered the active skill known as bash, proving that his weapon proficiency has indeed leveled up behind the scenes, and that his hours of looking like a maniac have not been a waste of time. He turns to her and casually asks if she survived the encounter, but she just stares at him blankly and states that he is the most eccentric person she has ever met. Later on, the two of them sit down to enjoy a drink and get to know each other without any flying timber interrupting the conversation. The girl learns that he is scheduled to start his very first year of middle school this coming April, prompting her to introduce herself as Karen Tanya, while casually dropping the massive flex that she is actually a third-year student at the exact same academy. Kazuya offers his gratitude for the free beverage, to which she replies that if he ever finds himself getting bullied or lost in the hallways, he could simply come find her for protection. She openly admits that she has been dying to strike up a conversation with him for a long time, leaving him entirely perplexed, until she explains that his daily routine of turning a training log into sawdust has made him a legendary meme among the locals. She points out that unlocking a high-tier active skill like Bash before even stepping foot inside a middle school classroom is an absolute speedrun tactic. He casually shrugs it off and states that he had literally just learned the move 5 minutes ago, an admission that causes her jaw to hit the floor in absolute disbelief. She notes that a normal student usually requires 3 agonizing years of academic lectures just to master that exact same strike, viewing his rapid progress as definitive proof that he is a hardworking genius who inspires her to start taking her own training seriously. Kazuya, completely ignoring the compliments, immediately brings up a highly practical broke boy concern, asking her if she knows of any secret maps or farming locations where he can swing his mace for free. Up until this point, he had been blowing his entire childhood allowance on buying replacement logs from the shop, and the financial toll of his grind set is finally about to bankrupt his bank account. Tanya laughs and agrees that while an individual log seems cheap, the microtransactions of buying them in bulk will absolutely ruin anyone's finances over time. He solemnly admits that he is already completely broke, and that if he cannot find a free-to-play training method, his entire character progress will grind to a permanent halt. She smiles and suggests that it was time for him to stop attacking inanimate objects and start hunting actual monsters, informing him about a low-level slime forest located in the neighboring town. Since he can already execute a high-damage bash attack, she reasoned that he should easily be able to solo the starter enemies without any issue. The mere mention of farming monsters instantly triggers his dormant gaming instincts, filling him with intense excitement because hunting low-tier monsters is something he used to do for 14 hours a day in his past life. Before he dashes off to the location, she gives him a serious high-level warning, stating that if he wanders too deep into the uncharted zones of the woods, he will get absolutely wrecked by a high-mobility monster known as a horned rabbit. The perspective then shifts to the slime forest, where Kazuya can be seen absolutely farming the local wildlife while enjoying the experience like a kid in a candy store. This is the authentic gaming experience he has been craving, allowing him to gain real-time combat mastery, level up his hidden attributes, and secure a steady stream of passive income all at the same time. After 3 hours of non-stop slime genocide, physical fatigue finally starts to weigh him down, but he manages to fill his inventory with a massive haul of monster drops. Deciding that this initial raid is merely a scouting mission, he resolves to head back to town while making a mental note that he desperately needs to purchase a larger backpack to maximize his farming efficiency next time. Right as he turns to leave, a terrifying, high-frequency rattling sound echoes from the bushes directly behind him, and a wild horned rabbit suddenly spawns into the clearing. He immediately curses his own greed for wandering too far past the safe zone as the aggressive creature locks eyes with him and charges forward like an unhinged anime antagonist. Kazuya cracks his knuckles and smirks, confidently thinking to himself, "Nah, I'd win. Alright, you are not Gojo lil bro." He tries to wind up his signature bash attack, but the rabbit's movement speed is completely broken, darting across the grass like a TikTok video playing at double speed. The creature's agility is on an entirely different tier of power, rendering his slow, vertical overhead swings completely useless against its erratic pathing. Adjusting his inputs like a pro player, he quickly switches to a wide horizontal swing, managing to successfully connect his mace with the rabbit's face, but the attack does absolutely zero damage to its health bar. To make matters worse, he notices a massive durability warning on his weapon, which has cracked upon making contact with the rabbit's ironclad skull. The monster lunges through the air once again, and Kazuya realizes with absolute horror that his human reaction time is far too slow to parry the incoming attack. He takes a direct, devastating hit to the chest that sends him flying into the dirt, causing the harsh reality of his situation to finally smash through his thick skull. This is not a cozy virtual reality game where he can simply respawn at the nearest checkpoint. This is real life, and his actual health bar is flashing red. He frantically spammed his low-level heal spell to patch up his wounds, realizing that even a generic starter monster in this world can easily delete him if it possesses a higher speed stat. Forcing his racing heart to calm down, he decides to stop rushing, bait the rabbit into close-quarters combat, and wait patiently for the enemy to lock itself into an attack animation. The exact moment the creature jumps, exposing a critical opening, Kazuya unleashes every ounce of his remaining stamina into a desperate bash attack. The blow connects perfectly, landing as a massive critical hit that sends the rabbit crashing to the ground, completely defeated. Breathing heavily and covered in sweat, he muttered that he had somehow survived the encounter, knowing that if his timing had been off by even a single fraction of a second, he would have been sent straight to the afterlife. The reality of the situation finally sinks into his brain, forcing him to realize that while this world utilizes video game logic, a single mistake means permanent death, meaning he will have to completely abandon his arrogant gamer mindset if he wants to survive. He picks up the heavy carcass of the defeated horned rabbit, remembering Tanya's helpful advice that he could exchange high-tier monster drops for actual cash at the local ward office. For the entirety of the following week, he transforms into an absolute ghost of the slime forest, farming the zone from sunrise to sunset without a single moment of rest. By ruthlessly selling every single piece of loot he stripped from the monsters, he managed to secure a whopping 100,000 yen in just 7 days of pure grinding. Compared to the mind-numbing boredom of hitting a wooden log in a gym, exterminating actual monsters feels infinitely more dopamine-inducing and financially rewarding. Flush with cash, he sets his sights on purchasing a premium skill sheet of his very own, a high-tech item that would allow him to inspect his hidden stats and attributes from the comfort of his own bedroom without any paperwork. Upon arriving at the ward office, the beautiful receptionist offers him a deep bow, thanking him profusely for his incredible service to the community before handing over the magic sheet and instructing him to place a single drop of blood on the surface to initialize the display. He politely thanked her for the smooth transaction, but she insisted that the guild was the party that owed him a massive debt of gratitude for his service. She explained that the materials he had been casually bringing in over the past 2 weeks were incredibly rare and valuable, noting that the office had never once witnessed a literal child deliver 20 kilograms of premium slime cores every single day. Thanks to his obsessive sweatlord behavior, Kazuya had accidentally transformed himself into a local cryptid and a legendary celebrity among the office staff. Right at that exact moment of peak glory, his actual parents suddenly walked through the front doors of the building, causing him to freeze in absolute terror like a teenager who had just been caught doing something illegal. They marched right up to his face, with his father immediately demanding to know why on earth his underage son was hanging around a shady monster-pawning facility instead of doing his homework. Kazuya opened his mouth to stammer out a lame excuse, but his father cut him off entirely, mentioning that a wild rumor had been circulating town about a mysterious kid who was single-handedly crashing the local slime core economy with massive item drops. Curious about the gossip, the father had decided to investigate the claims himself, which was how he ended up catching his own son red-handed at the front desk. He glared down at Kazuya, demanding to know the truth about where an unathletic gamer had managed to acquire a massive sack of high-grade monster parts. Kazuya looked his dad dead in the eye and stated that he had personally soloed every single one of those monsters through pure skill. His father's expression instantly hardened into pure disappointment, telling him to stop making up delusional anime fantasies, because everyone knew Kazuya was far too weak and fragile to survive a single encounter with a wild beast. A cold wave of fear and childhood trauma crept into Kazuya's mind, causing him to take a defensive step backward away from his family. His father reached out a hand to grab his shoulder and demand compliance, but Kazuya violently pulled away, stating that if his own parents were going to permanently view him as a useless loser without even listening to his side of the story, then there was absolutely no point in wasting his breath. He turned around and stormed off, thinking to himself that despite being completely reborn into a magical fantasy universe with game mechanics, his family dynamic was still exactly as toxic as it was in his past life, leaving him to wonder if he had truly changed at all as a person. Shortly after his dramatic family fallout, the time arrived for him to prepare for the official middle school entrance ceremony, leaving him with one final task, which was to finally activate the premium skill sheet he had purchased with his hard-earned slime money. Once the bloody appraisal process finished loading, the floating text confirmed exactly what his Galaxy Brain gamer theories had predicted all along. It had not taken him 3 years of boring classroom lectures to unlock those active abilities, because in this world, skill acquisition was directly tied to grinding weapon proficiency through repetitive physical actions. He could not comprehend how an entire society of civilized human beings had failed to notice such a blatant, base game mechanic. But this discovery definitive proved that his years of wasting away in MMORPG lobbies could be used as a literal cheat code in this reality. This meant that scaling his stats to the level of the ultimate Fist King was not a distant fantasy, and that he could finally use his overwhelming power to force his stubborn father to acknowledge his worth. With a renewed sense of main character energy, he resolved to keep quietly expanding his character build step by step until he was completely unstoppable. The morning of the grand entrance ceremony finally arrived, and Kazuya found himself getting annoyed by his mother, loudly asking her what she planned to do with the 50 identical photos she was currently snapping of him on her phone. She flashed a maternal smile and told him that this was his big day as a rising freshman, meaning she needed to capture every single angle for her social media feed. He let out a massive, defeated sigh and looked up at the campus, noting that the academy looked less like a middle school and more like a massive, high-security fortress designed to survive an apocalypse. His mother then brought up the dramatic argument from the previous afternoon, explaining that his father was not actually trying to be a hater, but was simply worried that his son was getting involved in some dangerous, underground black market monster dealing. He muttered a completely half-hearted response just as the school bells began to chime, signaling the official start of the opening ceremony. The crowd went silent as Karen Tanya elegantly stepped up to the podium to deliver the welcoming address to the incoming freshman class, revealing to the entire stadium that she was actually the reigning student council president. Kazuya's eyes practically popped out of his head as he realized that the casual third-year girl who had promised to protect him from bullies was actually the most politically powerful student on campus. He noticed that her entire aura had completely shifted, looking incredibly majestic, composed, and professional compared to the casual girl who had watched him fail an overhead mace swing at the gym. She continued her speech with absolute eloquence, explaining to the freshmen that the next 3 years of their lives would be filled with brutal trials, dangerous dungeons, and terrifying monsters. She proclaimed that by forming parties, supporting their classmates, and embracing the power of friendship, they could collectively level up and overcome any obstacle in their path. She passionately urged them never to surrender to despair so they could graduate as elite, high-tier adventurers, expressing her ultimate hope that their class would one day grow strong enough to protect the entire nation from destruction. The moment she concluded her speech, the entire auditorium erupted into a massive wave of applause, leaving Kazuya genuinely impressed by her leadership skills. Suddenly, the inspiring atmosphere was completely ruined as the principal, a massive, intimidating man named Todoroki, violently took over the stage like a final boss entering the arena. He flashed a menacing grin at the crowd, introducing himself before casually asking the freshman class if they were all familiar with the academy's traditional skill appraisal system. Kazuya was caught completely off guard when the principal announced that the school had hired a full-time, high-level professional appraiser just to audit the students' hidden stats on live television. He introduced a solemn-looking man named Yujihara, who offered a polite bow to the crowd while looking like a man who desperately wanted to go home. The principal then flashed a highly punchable smirk and made a shocking announcement, stating that any incoming freshmen who felt like they were absolute prodigies should step up to the stage right now for a special, live appraisal session in front of the entire student body. The upperclassmen sitting in the back rows let out a collective, synchronized groan, immediately recognizing this stunt as the school's traditional method of publicly hazing overconfident freshmen to ruin their self-esteem. Without warning, the principal extended a finger and pointed directly into the crowd at a random, trembling student, leaving the poor kid looking completely terrified. Standing right beside the target, Kazuya decided that this was the perfect opportunity to flex his hidden stats, stepping forward onto the stage and casually asking the faculty if he could borrow a training weapon to demonstrate his build. The principal let out a loud, mocking laugh and granted permission, while down in the crowd, both Kazuya's mother and Tanya looked like they were about to have a collective heart attack from shock. Yujihara leaned in and offered a quiet apology to the teenager, explaining that the principal was just a toxic boomer who liked to scare the new kids to motivate them. Kazuya casually told him not to worry about it, stating that he was honestly just curious to see if his expensive, blood-activated skill sheet matched the official school hardware. Taking a deep breath, Kazuya centered his stance, closed his eyes, and unleashed the full magnitude of his hidden power, causing a massive pressure wave to ripple through the entire auditorium. Yujihara completely froze in place, his appraisal tools slipping from his fingers as the entire stadium fell into a dead, suffocating silence. The principal burst out laughing, loudly praising the boy's confidence and declaring that Kazuya would become an internet celebrity by tomorrow morning for his bravery. He then turned to Yujihara and casually apologized for wasting his time, remarking that the kid's aura was probably just a cheap illusion and that he was clearly still an inexperienced amateur. Still trembling with absolute shock, Yujihara stared at the readout screen and revealed to the entire audience that Kazuya actually possessed the active skill bash at level 2. The principal's smug smile instantly vanished from his face, leaving him visibly shaken because it was mechanically impossible for a kid who had just graduated elementary school to possess an active combat skill. Before anyone's brain could fully process the absolute glitch they were witnessing, Kazuya decided to double down on the flex, activating his active heal spell right on stage and causing a bright holy light to illuminate the dark auditorium, leaving Yujihara even more utterly flabbergasted. With the absolute calmness of a pro player smurfing in a bronze lobby, Kazuya casually stated to the faculty that he wasn't even close to being done showing off his build. The principal grew incredibly irritated and red-faced, raising his voice to bark that children should know their place and listen to their superiors instead of trolling on stage. Completely ignoring the authority figure like a true Chad, Kazuya pushed his inputs to the absolute limit, activating a high-tier magical attack buff that enveloped his entire body in a glowing aura of pure energy. The entire crowd absolutely erupted into a chaotic frenzy of screams and whispers, with students clutching their heads in disbelief, as the entire hierarchy of the school was demolished in real time. Everyone in the stadium began to desperately ask the exact same question, wondering what kind of cosmic anomaly this kid was, considering he possessed a high-level bash, a professional-grade heal, and a rare magical buff all before attending a single class. Completely overwhelmed by the situation, Yujihara politely escorted Kazuya into a private backstage room for further evaluation, admitting that in his entire career as a professional appraiser, he had never once encountered a child who had managed to unlock three active skills simultaneously. Kazuya waved to Tanya as she walked in, offering his thanks for her support, to which she replied that she was just glad he hadn't broken the stage equipment. She noted that the principal was currently trapped outside, desperately fighting for his life against a massive mob of angry parents who were demanding to know why a random kid was flexing boss-tier magic during a middle school assembly. Tanya wondered if Kazuya had secret tutorial access, and Yujihara agreed, noting that half the faculty believed the boy had been illegally homeschooled by an S-rank adventurer. Kazuya's mother listened to the conversation with absolute pride as Yujihara dropped an even larger bombshell, revealing that upon closer inspection of the official data, Kazuya's bash skill was actually maxed out at level 10. Kazuya raised an eyebrow in confusion, pointing out that the appraiser had literally just told the entire stadium that his skill was only at level 2 a few minutes ago. Yujihara cleared his throat and clarified that the discrepancy was due to his low base weapon proficiency at the start of the test. The skill's true output had been heavily throttled by his garbage stats, but now that his club mastery attribute had successfully reached level 10 through his unhinged log-beating routine, he could officially fire off the bash skill at 100% of its maximum damage potential. Kazuya nodded to himself, reflecting on how this world's coding operated exactly like a classic RPG where skill scaling was hard-capped by weapon stats. He then brought up the principal's earlier announcement, recalling that students who possessed high-level combat skills had the legal right to skip the academy entirely through a special exemption clause. He looked the faculty dead in the eye and stated his definitive intention to take that exact path, revealing that he had zero interest in sitting through 3 years of boring middle school classes, because his only goal was to speedrun his character progression as fast as humanly possible. His mother tried to frantically intervene, begging him to just be a normal kid and make some friends, but he completely ignored her pleas, stating that he needed to acquire absolute strength so he could solo any boss monster in the world without relying on a party. Yujihara let out a heavy sigh, pointing out that no matter how cracked a player's build was, nobody could truly survive the in-game content entirely alone. He acknowledged that Kazuya's work ethic and raw talent were absolutely unhinged, but emphasized that attending classes would allow him to meet high-level party members and develop his social skills. His mother quickly wrapped up the meeting, stating that they would officially discuss the legalities of the school exemption with the principal tomorrow before heading back home, while reminding Kazuya to be incredibly careful on his walk back. Yujihara bid the boy farewell, suggesting that they should probably have a serious family meeting with his father the moment they stepped through the front door. Tanya then slowly approached Kazuya in the hallway, looking slightly nervous as she asked him if he wanted to walk home together since they lived in the same neighborhood. On the way down the suburban streets, Kazuya offered a sincere apology for completely ruining her peaceful opening ceremony with his unhinged stat flexing. She admitted that she was genuinely shocked when she heard him announce his plans to drop out of school on his very first day, prompting him to confess that he was still weighing his options with his parents. However, he reiterated his stance that sitting in a classroom for 3 years felt like a massive waste of exp, especially since his current power level was so pathetic that he almost got deleted by a single horned rabbit last week. He argued that the entire school curriculum was designed for casuals, pointing out that if the average student stopped complaining and simply grinded a wooden log for 8 hours a day for a single month, they could easily master the entire syllabus before finals. Tanya abruptly stopped walking, interrupting his rant to explain that not every human being possessed the terrifying, borderline psychotic level of dedication required to do that. She noted that the average teenager had a life, hobbies, and a fragile mental state, meaning they needed those 3 years of steady pacing just to safely unlock a single skill without hurting themselves. She acknowledged that his work ethic was completely built different, but told him that he couldn't expect the rest of society to match the toxic grinding habits of a sweatlord. Kazuya stared at her face, realizing with a sudden pang of guilt that his arrogant, elitist gamer comments had deeply hurt her feelings as an academic overachiever. She quickly looked away and offered a polite apology for snapping at him, stating that she hoped to see him in class tomorrow before running off toward her house. The moment Kazuya stepped foot inside his living room, his father tossed the official school report onto the table, aggressively questioning whether this ridiculous skill sheet actually belonged to his son. Kazuya nodded calmly, confirming that he had purchased the document using the cold, hard cash he earned from his solo slime farming expeditions. His father stared at him with intense skepticism, asking him one final time if the wild stories about him vaporizing logs and casting holy magic were actually true. Kazuya crossed his arms, challenging his old man by asking if he finally believed in his son's power, but his father let out a defeated sigh and admitted that he still could not bring himself to accept it. He argued that a kid unlocking 3 high-tier combat skills in the span of a single month defied the absolute laws of human nature. Kazuya threw his hands up in frustration, recounting the entire agonizing process of hitting a wooden log for 8 hours every single day until his knuckles turned to jelly. His father rubbed his temples, expressing deep parental concern over the fact that his son had suddenly stopped playing video games, started brutally murdering slimes, and was now acting like a completely different person, leading him to wonder if the skill sheet was an elaborate forgery. Kazuya scoffed, asking his dad if he was honestly accusing him of printing fake stats just to look cool on the internet. His father apologized for his harsh skepticism, stating that as an adventurer himself, he needed to see his son's combat capabilities with his own 2 eyes before he could truly believe the hype. Kazuya agreed to the challenge without a single moment of hesitation, prompting the two of them to pack their gear and head straight to the high-level gate of the Izukogen field. At the security checkpoint, the armored guards meticulously scanned their identification cards to verify their clearance levels. Kazuya poked his dad's shoulder, asking about the legal purpose of the cards, to which his father informed him that the license was a formal graduation certificate from an elite adventurer academy. He explained that hunting dangerous monsters in high-level zones strictly required at least one certified, licensed professional in the party, which was the legal reason why amateur children were banned from solo farming slimes without adult supervision. Kazuya was completely stunned to find out he had been casually breaking the law for the past 2 weeks, sweating profusely as he promised to be on his best behavior from now on. The moment the massive steel security gates began to slowly hiss open, a massive, unhinged smile spread across Kazuya's face as he stared at the high-level hunting grounds, realizing that his exp gains were about to absolutely skyrocket. Upon entering the dense forest, his mother tapped her husband's shoulder, reminding him that both of them needed to put on their heavy tactical gear before moving any further into the brush. Kazuya stared at his parents in absolute shock, having never expected his mundane, ordinary parents to secretly possess high-level endgame equipment. He looked down at his own basic setup, realizing that if he played his cards right, he could use his parents as meat shields to level up his character build at Mach speed. His father asked him if his current weapon loadout was ready, specifically inquiring if he felt comfortable wielding a standard training sword instead of his usual blunt mace. Kazuya completely froze in place, staring at his parents who now looked like high-tier raid bosses covered in glowing armor, glowing swords, and high-caliber firearms. His father noted that proper defensive scaling was absolutely essential in real combat, explaining that while modern gun builds were the current meta for clearing dungeons, he wanted to see what his son could accomplish using nothing but a classic, low-tier blade. They began venturing deep into the shadowy woods, with his father constantly barking orders at him to keep his guard up and mask his presence from the local predators. The father instructed him that if they encountered an enemy mob, Kazuya needed to immediately dive into the bushes, hide his power level, and wait for the creature to lower its guard before executing a single stealth attack. Just as Kazuya was about to respond, his sharp gamer senses picked up the faint audio cue of multiple heavy footsteps rapidly approaching their position from the rear. Within seconds, 4 massive, snarling direwolves materialized from the shadows, causing the overall tension in the air to skyrocket. His father frantically readied his firearm, but the wolves were moving with incredible velocity, dodging left and right like agile anime characters. Ignoring all safety protocols, Kazuya dashed forward into the danger zone, charging directly at the pack of monsters with the unhinged energy of a player trying to force level his sword proficiency stat. Closing the distance in a single frame, he executed a flawless high-speed vertical slash that completely cut down the lead wolf in a single hit, causing his father to freeze in absolute slack-jawed shock. Kazuya flashed a cocky grin at the remaining 3 wolves, loudly taunting their terrible AI and mocking their speed stats as he spun his sword around. The wild beasts immediately recognized him as the primary threat, shifting their aggro entirely onto him as the casual stroll transformed into a brutal fight for survival. The skirmish ended almost instantly, as Kazuya executed a series of flawless, high-damage standard attacks that turned the remaining wolves into literal loot drops. As he wiped the sweat from his forehead and tried to catch his breath, the ground beneath them began to violently shake as a massive horde of screeching mandragoras erupted from the soil. His father frantically screamed at him to fall back and retreat, explaining that these specific mobs possessed a unique call ability that would summon endless reinforcements if they weren't wiped out instantly. However, Kazuya completely ignored the warning, immediately activating his physical ability Boost Magic and leaping directly into the center of the monster wave like a madman. Moving with absolute precision and frame-perfect agility, he began slicing through the plants one by one before they could even finish their spawn animations. His father could barely believe his own eyes, watching his scrawny son move like an absolute god-tier esports player. Kazuya laughed to himself, recalling his deep game knowledge which taught him that spawn-killing mobs before they fully emerged was the ultimate strategy, and that 2 quick hits with a bash skill were more than enough to delete their entire health bars. Suddenly, a massive shadow fell over the clearing as a colossal, threat-level grizzly bear emerged from the deep brush, letting out a roar that shook the trees. His father completely froze in place, his face turning pale as he wondered how on earth an endgame boss monster had managed to spawn in a low-level training zone. The giant beast lunged forward with terrifying speed, and Kazuya, realizing his parents were in the splash zone, intentionally stepped into the attack path to draw the aggro. The massive bear violently swiped its claws, launching Kazuya high into the air before opening its giant jaws and swallowing the teenager whole right in front of his horrified parents' eyes. His mother let out a blood-curdling scream, believing her son had just been permanently deleted from existence. And this is how the manga ends. Thanks for watching. Yeah, no. In the very next second, a massive glowing beam of energy violently sliced through the grizzly's stomach from the inside out. Kazuya burst through the monster's chest cavity in an explosion of pixels and bare guts, landing perfectly on his feet like a seasoned anime protagonist who had just executed a classic trope. Covered in monster residue but completely unfazed, he quickly spammed his high-level heal spell to restore his health bar to full, turning around to check if his crying parents had taken any collateral damage. Flashing a small, incredibly smug smile at his stunned father, Kazuya casually asked him if he finally had enough video evidence to admit that his son was officially cracked. His mother rushed forward at maximum speed, violently tackling him into a massive hug while sobbing tears of pure relief, leaving Kazuya looking completely puzzled by her intense emotional reaction. His father walked over with glistening eyes, gently patting the boy on the head while thanking God that his son was still alive, before finally looking him in the eye and admitting that Kazuya had indeed become strong. Someone inquires Yujihara for some expert coaching and asks how Tanya's character build is progressing. He sighs and replies that while her sword proficiency stat has technically gone up, she is still completely hard stuck with 0 active skills. During the class break, her friend hypes up her slow progress, prompting Tanya to offer a polite thank you, though she secretly wonders when she will finally unlock a flashy superpower of her own. Her friend tells her to just sit back and take it easy, reminding her that they are literally only at the start of their 3rd year of middle school. Suddenly, they overhear a group of nearby boys gossiping about Kazuya like they are discussing a legendary leak on Reddit. The boys mention that the kid has already unlocked high-level moves and is completely self-taught, even claiming that he managed to completely solo a high-level grizzly bear. Her friend chimes in, noting that Kazuya hasn't even bothered showing up to school since the incident, casually remarking that the guy must just possess elite main character genetics. The boys complain that the entire system is completely rigged, muttering that if they had cheat codes like his, they wouldn't even bother waking up for morning lectures. Tanya suddenly jumps into the conversation like a true defender of the grind, calling them out and stating that they are completely wrong. She fiercely insists that Kazuya works harder than anyone else in the server and shouldn't be dismissed as a simple carried player. One of the boys quickly apologizes, jokingly asking if she just hates people talking trash about her secret crush. Tanya's face instantly turns completely crimson, and she lunges at them like an angry anime girl ready to drop a hollow purple. The boys rapidly scatter down the hallway, teasing her that the local rumors must be 100% true and that they are fully rooting for her relationship arc. She stands there in absolute shock and confusion, genuinely wondering if the entire school is currently shipping her with the local sweatlord. Meanwhile, across town, Kazuya suddenly pauses mid-sentence, feeling a sudden chill as if someone had just typed his name into a group chat. His father notices the sudden glitch in his posture and asks if something is wrong with his sensory inputs. Kazuya replies that it is nothing, even though he genuinely felt like someone was talking smack about him behind his back. The school principal lets out a chuckle, remarking that the teenager has officially become a local celebrity. He explains that the administration wanted to sit down and discuss Kazuya's academic future based on the unhinged data gathered by Yujihara and the official guidelines, apologizing for the massive delay. Kazuya's father responds that it is totally fine, casually mentioning that they took the kid out to a high-level field yesterday just to test his frame data. The principal leans forward, asking if the rumors are true and if Kazuya really did delete the grizzly bear. The father confirms the kill, explaining that he and his wife have collectively decided to let their son choose his own gaming path from now on. The mother adds that she was a total hater at first, until she saw him fight in real time, admitting that the boy has reached a level of power scaling that is completely beyond their parental control, and that she has never seen him so passionate about a grind. The father continues, stating that although his son's lifestyle seems completely reckless, seeing the boy become so overpowered genuinely brings joy to his heart. The principal then slides a top-secret document across the table, explaining it is a custom progression blueprint prepared directly by the student council, leaving the parents completely stunned. It turns out Kazuya is being granted a permanent skip-school pass along with an official letter of recommendation to the Adventurers Guild. Confused by the sudden academic cheat code, the parents ask for immediate clarification. The principal calmly explains that forcing a player of Kazuya's caliber to sit through standard middle school lectures is a massive waste of potential, as there are 0 academies in the country capable of supporting his rapid level-ups. Right on cue, Kazuya chimes in, stating that he will gladly accept the dropout pass if it allows him to maximize his strength gains. His father lets out a massive sigh before agreeing to the terms, setting one mandatory condition, which is that Kazuya must return to the base for family dinner every single night. Kazuya promises to follow the rule, finalizing the agreement, with the first guild meeting officially scheduled for next Sunday at the Shizuoka branch. The moment he arrives at the location, Kazuya stands there completely amazed by the absolute scale of the venue. Back in his virtual reality days, he only ever loaded into this map to accept generic daily quests, but seeing the whole environment rendered in actual reality feels entirely different. He notices veteran players running around equipped with all kinds of premium legendary armor, though he personally feels 0 need to buy cosmetic defense gear since he plans to just dodge every hit. A polite receptionist approaches his scrawny frame, asking if he is a lost child who wandered away from his parents. He casually flashes the official school recommendation letter, explaining his situation, which causes the entire guild hall to fall into a dead, suffocating silence. The local players cannot believe that a literal middle schooler has just showed up with S-tier administrative credentials. The receptionist stands there freezing, completely unsure how to process the glitch, until the high-level guild master steps in and announces that the kid is his personal VIP guest. He introduces himself as Jai, confirming that the school principal had already sent over the kid's cracked stats beforehand. Inside the private office, Jai asks about Kazuya's current loadout, and Kazuya casually mentions he already possesses 3 active skills, which catches the master completely off guard. He explains that he only joined the guild to maximize his strength and farm high-level quests. Jai lets out a chuckle, appreciating the boy's toxic work ethic, admitting that the local map has recently seen a massive spike in monster spawn rates and that they desperately need more high DPS players. However, he firmly states that the guild has a strict policy against sending literal children into high-level raid zones. Kazuya aggressively insists that his power level is fully mature, prompting Janai to jokingly remark that the kid carries himself with the grumpy energy of an old boomer despite his youthful face. The master's expression then turns completely serious, noting that he spotted the physical trauma on Kazuya's body from the grisly fight, something the casual onlookers had completely missed. Janai reminds him with absolute seriousness that this life is not a video game, explaining that if your health bar hits 0 in this world, you experience a permanent Ray 0 reset with no respawns. He warns him that true elite players do everything possible to minimize unnecessary risks to protect both themselves and their teammates, stating that Kazuya's reckless solo behavior proves he is still a total amateur. Decide there is no point in delivering a boomer lecture, Jai proposes an immediate practical test to see if the kid is truly built different. Kazuya looks slightly confused, so Janai explains that if he can successfully clear a designated subjugation quest without getting wiped out, he will officially receive his adventure license. Kazuya agrees to the terms without a single moment of hesitation, prompting Janai to inform him that he will be forced to play in a co-op party with a designated partner. Kazuya immediately objects, claiming that he strictly plays as a solo Q warrior, only to be violently smacked on the back of his head by an angry woman who screams at him for being an arrogant little brat. Janai introduces the aggressive newcomer as Adamau, the guild's premier monster dismantling specialist. She looks completely annoyed by the tutorial assignment, while Kazuya stares back with pure toxicity. Janai reveals that their objective is to clear out a nearby flock of cockatrices, warning them that it is a highly aggressive, large-type monster that stands up to 3 meters tall with the body of a rooster and a deadly snake for a tail. The test is completely simple, as Kazuya just needs to execute one of them to pass. They arrive at the designated farming zone, and Kazuya winds up his mace, ready to initiate the encounter. He offers a quick thank you to Mao for guiding him, but she rolls her eyes, reminding him that he can still abandon the quest if he is too scared. He brushes off her concern, but she continues to pester him about the danger, asking if he has a literal death wish. Completely irritated by her nagging, he tells her to shut her mouth if she has zero intention of helping him deal damage, suggesting she just sit back and prepare to carve up the loot drops, which only makes her furious. Before their toxic argument can escalate any further, they spot their target roaming the clearing. However, instead of a solitary monster, an entire massive flock of cockatrices suddenly spawns into the zone. Mao frantically whispers that the plan is to pull a single mob away from the group, but completely ignoring the strategy, Kazuya charges straight into the center of the pack like a Leroy Jenkins clone. Utilizing his physical boost magic, he executes a massive swing that instantly one-taps the first monster into the dirt. His overall movement speed is completely broken, allowing him to quickly dart across the grass and effortlessly delete a second creature before the flock can even register his presence. Mao watches the display with her jaw on the floor, unable to comprehend why this teenager looks like he is experiencing pure dopamine while fighting for his life. Kazuya recalls his meta-knowledge, remembering that the monster's core weak point is its heart, which is heavily protected by massive chest shielding, meaning the entire fight depends on landing a frame-perfect hit on that exact spot. The next cockatrice attempts to parry his mace, but Kazuya easily animation cancels, forces a massive opening, and finishes the creature off with a critical strike. Mao grows even more flabbergasted, realizing his combat knowledge and overall strength rival that of an S-rank veteran. She flashes back to earlier at the guild hall, recalling how she had initially tried to reject the babysitting assignment until Janai explained that the kid was an absolute prodigy. The master had even showed her a newspaper clipping detailing Kazuya's unhinged power, explaining that he needed an experienced specialist like her to audit the boy and see if his build was truly legitimate. Back in the field, Kazuya snaps her out of her thoughts, telling her to stop slouching and start harvesting the loot, forcing her to reluctantly get to work. As she strips the materials, she reflects on the absolute absurdity of what she just witnessed, realizing that fighting high-level monsters in close quarters without even using a meta gun build is something she wouldn't attempt in 100 lifetimes. She genuinely doubts whether a bizarre solo player like him could ever properly fit into a standard guild party, but decides it isn't her job to judge and resolves to just report the facts to Jai. Suddenly, the severed snake tails of the dead cockatrices violently twitch and begin to move on their own. It turns out that even after the main body's health bar hits zero, the autonomous snake appendages continue to survive as separate trash mobs. Mao instantly finds herself surrounded by the hostile snakes, realizing with horror that her primary firearm is still locked inside the truck. She tries to calm her breathing, telling herself that they are just basic slithering enemies without their main bodies, but the moment one lunges directly at her throat, pure survival panic takes over, and she instinctively closes her eyes to accept her fate. In a literal fraction of a second, Kazuya executes a massive AoE strike that vaporizes every single snake in the vicinity, causing her to blink her eyes open in absolute shock. I retract what I said. Bro might actually be the chosen one. The teenager stands there looking incredibly satisfied, reading a floating notification confirming he has just unlocked a brand new active ability known as Shockwave. With this new crowd control move added to his hotbar, he can now easily deal with multiple target mobs at the exact same time. He turns to her and offers a casual apology, admitting that he completely forgot the enemy patch notes mentioned the autonomous tail mechanic. He asks if her health bar took any damage, and she quickly hides her intense awe, claiming she easily had the situation under control on her own. Right at that moment, an even larger wave of cockatrices begins to aggro onto their location from the deep forest. Kazuya lets out an excited laugh, telling her to get her carving knife ready for a massive crafting session before dashing straight back into the fray like a lunatic. She watches his departing figure in absolute disbelief, muttering that the kid's power scaling is completely impossible. After a massive farming session, Mao swiftly finishes processing the carcasses, perfectly separating the high-grade bones and feathers, leaving our young lad completely astonished by her high-speed macro efficiency. She offers a rare compliment, telling him his combat skills are actually impressive, but Kazuya shrugs it off, stating he still has a long way to go to fix his build. He mentions that he wants to wander deeper into the woods to farm a few more packs before they head home, but she firmly cuts him off, stating that the raid is officially over. He argues that his stamina bar is still full, but she points at his chipped weapon and asks how he plans to fight without durability or mana. She scolds him, stating that he needs to stop treating his life like a video game if he wants to survive in the guild, otherwise his reckless solo mindset will eventually get his entire party deleted. Kazuya stares back with cold, empty eyes, stating that maximizing his strength is his singular directive and that he does not care about anything else. Mao realizes the kid is currently going through a toxic, edgy anime protagonist phase and commands that they return to base immediately. Back at the guild headquarters, Janai's eyes pop out of his head as he reads the mission report, prompting Mao to tell him to lower his volume. The master cheerfully slaps Kazuya on the back, announcing that he has officially passed the tutorial and is being promoted directly to a rank 2 adventurer. He proudly proclaims to the entire guild hall that they have a new powerhouse on the roster, but unable to tolerate the cringe atmosphere, Mao turns around and storms out of the building. She states that she completely despises dealing with troublesome main characters, muttering that Kazuya's reckless attitude reminds her far too much of a past trauma. Kazuya watches her leave, suddenly realizing he never actually thanked her for saving his loot drops. Before he can dash after her, a greasy veteran player suddenly steps into his path, blocking his exit. The man flashes a sleazy smile, suggesting that Kazuya should ditch the solo queue life and join his elite party instead. Kazuya stares at him with total confusion, prompting the guy to explain that a party is a group of players who split exp while clearing high-level content. He brags that his entire squad consists of rank 2 pros who can clear dungeons infinitely faster than a useless utility player like Mao. A girl in his squad chimes in, loudly mocking Mao for being a weak casual who can't even hold a weapon in a real fight. The toxic comments instantly cause Kazuya's expression to darken, triggering intense flashbacks to his past gaming days. He remembers how the moment his avatar became high-level, his social inbox would get completely spammed by annoying, low-skill players trying to ride his coattails for free carries. He looks the squad leader dead in the eye, calmly asking the man to hand over his hunting knife for inspection. Kazuya examines the blade for a second, and then, without a single warning, violently slices the edge across his own palm, causing dark blood to spill onto the floor. He glares at the terrified party, stating that their trash-tier garbage knife doesn't even possess enough attack power to cleanly sever an arm, mocking them for thinking they have the macro skills to properly dismantle high-level loot. He barks at them that absolute casuals who rely on meta weapons have zero right to talk down on a specialist like Mao.